Welcome to Perceptive's first webinar in the fall 2018 semester, Rubrics for Peer Assessment. My name is Megan Riley, and I'll be talking to you today about how to improve the rubrics that you use for peer assessment. I am an English as a second language teacher with over 10 years at the university level. I've also worked as an assessment coordinator and assessment supervisor. So today we will talk about peer assessment rubrics, how to design effective rubrics, selling your rubric to students, and we'll end with a time for questions and answers. If you have a question at any time, you can type it in the chat feature. We'll address as many as we can during the question and answer time, and then follow up afterwards. So peer assessment rubrics are both similar to and different from teacher-only rubrics. They're similar because they evaluate the same criteria as instructor-rated assignments. In other words, whatever you want the assessment to be graded on, if it was just you doing the assignment, you need to have the same criteria for the students to assess as well. However, it's also different from a teacher-only rubric because it serves a dual purpose. Not only are the students assessing the document, you also want the assessment to promote their critical analysis and a higher quality of writing. In other words, you want to provide a path to improvement for them so that they, in the process of reviewing, learn how to think more critically and become better writers. They're also different because they need to be more student-friendly. They need to be worded clearly. You need to make sure that there's only one grading category per dimension. In other words, have one aspect of the assignment be graded with each qualitative comment and each rating prompt, and have clear descriptors with qualitative differences between each rating so that students know the difference between a 7 and a 6 or a 4 and a 3. And remember, these need to be so clear and so easy to understand that a student who may have never used a rubric before can easily understand the rubric and use it to assess other documents in a way that you or another instructor might. So when you're designing effective rubrics in Perceptive, there are commenting prompts and rating prompts. First, we'll talk about commenting prompts. Commenting prompts encourage qualitative feedback. This is your chance for students to write about what they read. And we found that, and the research has shown that more focused, specific prompts elicit better responses. You want to design these commenting prompts to elicit the type of feedback you want your students to write and receive. So if you want to focus on a specific aspect, like clarity of ideas or thesis statements, you want your commenting prompts to encourage feedback about clarity of ideas or thesis statements, for example. So here's a general commenting prompt. Comment on one strength of the assignment and on one area where there could be improvement. Be specific in your comments and suggestions. You can see that will get a positive and a negative and some feedback, some thinking about what the student read. But compare that with a focused commenting prompt. Comment on the clarity of ideas in the paper. Was anything unclear? Should any ideas be expressed in more depth? Mention at least 2 places where the ideas are expressed clearly or unclearly. Here, you're going to get much more focused responses because the commenting prompt is more focused. Now students are talking about clarity of ideas in particular, how in-depth the ideas are, and you've asked them to mention at least 2 places where the author is has either done these well or needs some improvement. So just by looking at the prompts, you can see that the quality of the feedback will oftentimes be different based on the commenting prompts. In Perceptive, there are also rating prompts. These are quantitative feedback. A 7 is a high score, a 1 is a low score. You want to encourage a spread of ratings. Design it so that a 7 means a student has truly mastered the concept. So 7 shouldn't be given because someone has 1 instance of something, or 7 shouldn't be given because it's an okay or average instance of whatever qualities you're looking for. A 7 should mean that the student really did an excellent job in this particular aspect, has mastered it, and is a confident user of the particular form or information. And you want to use concrete terms, all terms defined clearly rather than generic terms, good, bad, etc. Concrete terms will be easier for the students to understand. Remember, some students may have never used a rubric before, and generic terms like good and bad are very qualitative. So what you may say is good, I might say is bad or average, but if you make those terms very concrete, the ratings will be more accurate, more valid, and the students will be happier because they'll know what you want and what you're looking for in the rubric and in their assessment. Your student developing their understanding, their analysis, and their production. All right. Then there's also the rating prompts. These are quantitative feedback. A 7 is high, a 1 is low. In your rubrics, you want to encourage a spread of ratings. So design it so that a 7 means a student has truly mastered the concept. Not a 7 equals kind of they have some basic understanding of it, but no, a 7 means they've truly mastered the concept. You also want to use concrete terms, like all terms defined clearly, rather than generic terms, good, bad, etc., that students could interpret multiple ways and not consistently. So some other basics with rating prompts, and some of you I know have been using Perceptive for many years, and this is not new to you, and some of you it might be a little bit newer. So we're just taking it from the beginning, and then we'll talk about more advanced features in a few minutes. So when you're thinking about rating prompts and creating rating prompts, you want to keep it student-friendly. We have found that if you have 7 long sentences for your different levels, it's going to be overwhelming for the students. They're going to stop reading somewhere after rating 2 and just start guessing. So you want to keep it student-friendly by keeping your sentences, the descriptor sentences, short and specific. Another way you can do this is by only describing some of the ratings. And you can see that in this example here. Ratings 7, 5, 3, and 1 all have descriptive sentences. Ratings 2, 4, and 6 are just numbers. If we look at it more closely, rating 7, both theories, this is for an introduction. So this rating prompt is looking at how different economic theories were summarized in an introduction. The description says, rate how clearly and concisely the writer summarized the 2 economic theories. So if we look at the ratings now, rating 7, both theories were summarized clearly and concisely. This is the ideal, but you would know that most students are not going to be at a level 7 on the first assignment at the beginning of the semester, for example. Rating 5, both theories were summarized clearly but not concisely. You can see there's a difference between 7, both theories are clear and concise, to rating 5. They're both clear, but one or more is not concise. And here's where the rating 6 would come in. Imagine that a student summarized both theories clearly, one was concise, and the other one was just too long. A student would be able to extrapolate between rating 5 and rating 7 and choose rating 6. So this is one way to make the ratings a little more student-friendly by only listing descriptions in a few of the ratings. You do need to put numbers in the other. If you leave them blank, then those won't be rating options. Here's an example of that. If you leave a rating blank, it means it won't be a rating option. So this is rating their use of citations. And on purpose, I've only put in 3 levels. Level 7, all citations included correctly in APA formatting. 4, all citations included, but there were mistakes in the APA formatting. And 1, no citations included. So I'm sure many of you can see how in your own specific situations, a rating like this would fit well for citations, or if you wanted some element to be present, but you didn't want students to have to parse through exactly how well or how accurately one of their peers had included it. All right. A few other basics as you're creating your rating prompts in the rubric. Having multiple rating prompts for one dimension is possible, and it's actually sometimes nicer for students because there are fewer commenting prompts. If you look at the example screen here for the introduction, I have a commenting prompt at the top. Read the introduction and comment on the summary of the two economic theories and the thesis statement. A, were the theories explained concisely and clearly? Was any necessary information about those theories missing? B, does the thesis statement state which theory the writer believes more accurately describes modern economic change? Is anything particularly clear or confusing about the introduction? Be specific when you state where there is a good or problematic aspect of the introduction. So when a reviewer sees this on the rubric, they will need to type a comment in response to this prompt. You want these, as we said before, to be specific and focused. But if you're having a student write a comment on each rating, the student's going to get overwhelmed quickly. And you might see that the students are not doing a good job at reviewing because there's simply too many comments to respond to. So one way to avoid that is have one commenting prompt and several rating prompts within that commenting prompt. So here there's summary of theories, thesis statement, citations, and word count. Helps to avoid student burnout in the reviewing process. There's also here an option to weight ratings. So you can see the summary of theories and the thesis statement are weighted as 2. It's relative weighting, so they're given double the weight of something that's weighted with a 1, like citations and word count. This lets you focus on a specific skill or area if it's the beginning of the semester and you really want to work on thesis statements or hypothesis or some specific element. You can weight it more strongly so that the students are more focused on it, and you can also see their improvement over time. The option to weight ratings is also very nice if you have a point-based rubric. As you can see in my example, if you have the summary weighted 2, that might be similar to 40 points on a 100-point-based assignment. Thesis statement, the same. Then things that are less important, like citations and word count, that you want the students to do a good job in, but you're not as concerned about, can be worth a weight of 1, which might equal, say, a 10-point part of a traditional rubric. So again, this is very nice if you are coming off of point-based rubrics. It makes it easy to convert. Also here, although you don't see it on this screen, in my rubric, my summary of theories and my thesis statement rubrics, these have 7 full ratings so that the students need to think closely and really analyze how the document matched each of the different ratings for these 2 sections. Citations, as we saw before, I only had 3 elements. They got a 7 if they had all the citations and they were correct, a 4 if they had all citations but maybe the formatting wasn't correct, and a 1 if citations were missing. Word count can be as simple, yes, they have it, 7, no, they don't, 1. So there's a lot of flexibility within the rubric, within the ratings, to be able to account for different options that you might want on your specific rubric for your specific assignment. Moving on now, let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that you can do with rubrics. These rubrics let you track student growth. You can actually copy rubrics from past assignments, so the rubric can always be the same for your assignments. This can be really helpful if you're doing 4 or 5 lab reports or similar short assignments over the course of a semester. And you can let students track their progress in a specific area. You can also use just specific ratings across assignments, keep them the same, so that students are able to see that, say, their thesis statement, first they got a 3 for the first assignment, but the last assignment they got a 6. So they're able to actually track their progress. But one reminder, you know your students best. What information will they find valuable from the ratings and reviews? How much reviewing can they handle? And what are they going to be able to comment on usefully? I used Perceptive this summer with an ESL writing class, and I gave them too much to do. I naively thought they would be able to comment on everything, and they weren't. It was a good lesson in trying to know your students and what will they actually be able to do. If you have very advanced graduate students who are used to thinking critically, they might be able to comment on each aspect of the rating. If you have undergraduates or high school students who've never really had to think analytically about writing or about the parts of pieces of a writing, you might need to focus your comments on content or organization or some very focused thing where you're asking them only to comment on a few areas, rate the others to sort of build them up, scaffold them up to a point where they can comment on and think analytically about the whole assignment. But you know your students and your class best. All right, we wanted to talk about how you can sell your rubric to students. So selling your rubric, selling Perceptive to students can sometimes be harder than anything else when students feel like you're giving your work to them. So we wanted to talk a little bit about ways to help them see the value in this. First, explain how to use the rubric. Make sure that students understand the dimensions and the prompts. If they don't know what you're asking them to assess and analyze, or what the words mean, or what the differences are between a 7 and a 6 and a 5, they're not going to do a good job. Perceptive is based on there being lots of pieces of input, lots of points of input into a student's grade, and you want the points of input to be as accurate as possible, which can only happen if students really understand what you're asking them to do in the rubric. You want to encourage students to focus on the document. So not think about other things they've read or even their own writing, but focus on the document at hand. And you want to encourage them to try to grade like you would. Students usually have a good idea of what the instructor would say is an A or a B or a C, and you want them to try to cultivate thinking like you do when they're assessing their peers' work. Then I also wanted to talk about some responses to complaints. So if your students say, oh, it's just too hard to do this reviewing, I'll give everyone 7s. You want to remind them that a rating of 7 does not equal an A. As I said before, ratings are part of the input that determines the grade a document receives, but there are multiple pieces of input. So 1 7 does not mean, oh, this document gets an A. Again, you really want to encourage students to grade like you do. And a caution for students that you should know as well: giving the same rating for all areas in all documents reviewed by a student will result in a 0 review grade for that student. In other words, if I'm reviewing 3 documents and I give 7s for all aspects of all 3 documents, my review score will be a 0. If I give 7s for one student or one document that was excellent, and 5s and 6s and a few 7s and 3s for the other 2 reviews, I have a fine review score. The problem is when you give the same rating for all areas, for all the documents reviewed, that you get a low review grade. And at Perceptive, every semester we see some students who do that, who try to game the system by saying, oh, I don't have time, I'm just going to give everyone a 7 or everyone a 0 or 1. They actually end up with the 0 review grade. Also, you might hear the complaint, it takes too long. Why are there so many prompts to respond to? Because of the way that the Perceptive algorithm works, having multiple rating points is better because it increases the number of data inputs in the grading algorithm. But this is true even if there was no algorithm. Everyone has been in a class where there's, say, a college class where there's one final paper and your entire grade comes down to that one final paper, or a college class where there are weekly quizzes and a midterm and a final exam and a paper. It's usually easier to do better in the classes with multiple grading inputs, multiple quizzes, tests, papers, because if you do poorly in one point or on one day, you have all these other inputs coming in to help your grade. Well, within Perceptive, it works the same. If you have multiple inputs, multiple rating prompts, multiple commenting prompts, the grades are going to be more accurate because a student could do poorly in one section but well in another section, and that would be shown. That information would be captured if there are multiple rating points. It also, if there are multiple rating prompts and commenting prompts, provides a greater level of granularity for students and instructors to analyze performance. Going back to the example I had of the introduction, if there are multiple rating prompts, a student is able to say, you know, my thesis statement was really strong, but I didn't summarize the theories well, or my citations, I didn't include citations. This is a problem, and this is an area where I can improve for next time. If there's only one rating prompt, students don't get that granularity, that specificity of knowing what they did poorly and then knowing how they can improve. And wanted to end the talking session with this example of the reliability of a lab report. So this chart, and you will have a similar chart on any assignment you do with data from your class, from that assignment. If you look at the chart, it shows the reliability of the mean peer judgments for each dimension. So they have the rating dimensions here and the overall rating reliability. Items in red, like the introduction here, show poor reliability. That means that students either don't understand the concept or the rubric or both. The yellow is sort of average or modest reliability, and the green shows high reliability, where it's clear that students understand the concept and the rubric. As an instructor, if you're looking at this data and you see things in green, that means students really get the concept. They know what goes into an abstract, a materials description, for example. And not only do they know what goes into it, they know what makes a good abstract or materials description versus what makes a bad abstract or materials description. So this can visually show you what students understand, and perhaps like in this lab report, the introduction is poor. So perhaps you need to go back in class the next day and talk a little bit more about what makes a good introduction. Or perhaps you need to review your rating prompts to really make them more specific and more focused so you have a better idea of what the introduction should be in a good lab report. This kind of feedback as a teacher is very nice, and it comes instantaneously, and it's all focused on your assignment. So that's another nice way of using the rubrics to provide some feedback to you as the instructor about what is known and understood by your students and what they need more work on. All right, that brings us to the end of the information we wanted to share with you about rubrics. Now we'd like to open it up for questions. Jonathan, do you have any?
No, it looks like the chat room is still, the one question we had was, is the webinar going to be recorded? The answer to that is yes, we will provide this as a video so that you may share it with other instructors at your institution, or if you're in the teaching and learning office, you might be able to post this on some of your internal resources. So we will provide this at the end for any use that you need. And if there's any questions now, we can take them in the chat. And if not, then we'll close it up. But I'll give a 30 seconds here to see if anyone has anything to ask. All right. Seems like we're good to go on questions. So I really want to thank everyone for coming. We're going to be doing
a question.
Oh, we do?
Yes. Mort.
Hi, Mort. How are you?
I'm fine. One of the things that I've had problems with is figuring out how to construct these on dimensions and levels and nesting and comments and putting ratings within or across. Is there a good resource to show me that structure and to assist me in building the rubric that way?
Sure, yeah. When I send the video out of the webinar, I'll also make sure to include links to the specific resources in our knowledge base to guide you through the rubric design process. So I will definitely include that, and it's a step-by-step, and it'll explain with some screenshots how you add the dimensions and how you build that out with kind of the actual step-by-step with screenshots. So yeah, I can definitely provide that for you.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
Great. Anything else? And please feel free, everyone, if you just rather unmute the mic, you can definitely share out questions that way as well. All right, last call. Oh, here's one.
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Martha,
hi. Okay. If I'm using another software like Turnitin, for example, and I already have created some rubrics for my assignments, can I import those rubrics to to this Perceptive? Sorry.
Yeah, right. It's going to be difficult to directly import because the way that the rubrics are laid out might be different, but it's pretty simple to just copy and paste it in. We just provide text boxes. But I don't think the import function is really going to work that well from one platform to another. Once they're in Perceptive, though, you have the option to copy an entire rubric from assignment to assignment, or just pick and choose whether it's a commenting prompt or a rating prompt or a dimension. So once they're in there, from assignment to assignment, it's a one-click copy of the entire rubric or parts of the rubric.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question.
Yes, Mort.
Is there a way to print out the rubric so I have a hard copy?
Yes. When you go to the assignment overview page of Perceptive, so you click on the particular assignment that you want, and the assignment overview page at the very bottom, there's a button that says View as PDF, and what that will provide you is a PDF with the assignment description and all of the rubric prompts and ratings prompts under that, so you can print it out as a PDF.
Okay, so it'll all come out of the assignment.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've struggled a little with what I set up, and I know it's because it's on another server, but what I set up when I set up the course on due dates and times, and then when I set up assignments on due dates, and there's levels, and sorting through here has been a little confusing.
I understand. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. I have it up, an assignment up, so you can actually see where that's taken place. So this is an assignment overview. So this would be my course. You can see the biology lab report right here. I'd click on Manage Assignments, and then at the top right here, View as PDF. You'll click on that button, and it'll provide a download. It's downloading now, and you can see we have the overview here, and then each of the dimensions listed with the comment and the rating prompts written out for you. All right, anyone else?
That was helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please just send us an email. You can always access our knowledge base and submit support requests through the help menu in Perceptive. So if you have any specific questions, you can do that. Anything else, Megan?
No, thank you very much for attending.
Appreciate it, folks. We'll send you a follow-up very shortly.